Hey guys, this is Josh in another technical video, and today we're going to be discussing hard forks. You might have heard of Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Core, all these things like Bitcoin, and even Ethereum. It's like Ethereum Classic. And these are all hard forks, and today I'm going to explain what those things really are. Let's just jump right into it. All right, so first thing, remember this. The blockchain is essentially a very complicated software program that is run on many different servers, which are just computers. And these computers, remember, communicate via the internet and collectively make democratic decisions and update in response to the decisions made. So it's just a whole bunch of computers making decisions together. And cryptocurrencies, remember, are built on this software program called the blockchain. So it's very important to remember that distinction. The blockchain is just a really big software program on a whole bunch of computers, nodes, servers, whatever you want to call them. So what happens with a software update? Now you might not have known that, but the blockchain, again being a software, can get updates. And so an example is your iPhone. Your iPhone started off with iOS 1 probably, and then came iOS 2, iOS 3, iOS 4, all the way to iOS 11, and now we have, from the iPhone 1, we now have the iPhone X. So there's software updates all the time. And some people can still have iPhone 1s, and some people can still have iPhone Xs, and some people might still have iOS 1, or some people might still have iOS 9, and they just haven't downloaded the newest version of iOS to their iPhone or their smartphone, for example. So what about blockchain software updates? Now, this is a quote from Bitcoin.org, and there's a lot of really good information that I encourage you to look at on Bitcoin.org, because that's kind of like the central hub for all of the information. That's the site that supposedly Satoshi Nakamoto registered. Now it says developers are improving the software, but they can't force a change in the rules of the Bitcoin protocol because all users are free to choose what software they use. And that's just like users being free to choose what kind of iPhone they have or other smartphone. And it says here, in order to stay compatible with each other, all users need to use software complying with the same rules. Bitcoin can only work decently when a complete consensus between all users. So this is saying that everyone can choose what version of the software they want to use, but for a particular software to work effectively, all the nodes or all the servers and computers have to be using the same version because everything's communicating. And so I wrote something here for you. It says anybody can submit a Bitcoin improvement proposal. Remember that Bitcoin and the blockchain and all other cryptocurrencies are open source. So anyone can submit a BIP, a Bitcoin improvement proposal, to try to add to Bitcoin. And if the BIP is approved by the general community, it can be pushed to the next update of the Bitcoin core client, which is just the Bitcoin software. So anyone can make a suggestion, even you listening to this video. It has to be accepted by the general community before Bitcoin Core actually considers it an update. Now, with these updates, nodes and miners and all the servers and computers decide to update their software to the newest version or not. They can or they cannot. It's up to them. Again, it's an open software, and everyone can choose what version they want to have. So to kind of illustrate this, you can see all these servers or nodes or miners working together, and I have nodes 1 through 8, and this is just kind of how the blockchain works, is with all these separate nodes. And one node could choose to have version 1.2 of Bitcoin, for example, and one could have version 1.3. But for them all to work on one collective blockchain or one collective cryptocurrency, they all have to be running the exact same version of the software. So when there's an update, this is what happens with a hard fork. It's when you have some blocks and some servers with an upgraded version of the software and some with not. And this is why it's called a fork. It's like a fork in the road. So right here we have one stream of servers and a blockchain that is following the old rules or the old software program. It's like one set of servers is following version or iOS 1 while one is following iOS 2. And this forms new blocks and a new blockchain. And so it's a divergence of two separate softwares running at the same time. So here's a couple of examples of Bitcoin forks in particular. There's the Bitcoin XT, the Bitcoin Classic, the Bitcoin Unlimited. Now these are unintentional forks. These are forks that occurred when a update happened in Bitcoin, and some people upgraded their software and some did not. And so what happened was the Bitcoin community recognized that there was that maybe a certain number of servers, like 51%, had decided to go on a Bitcoin Classic fork, while the other 49% went with a different version of Bitcoin. And so the community kind of had to collectively agree which one was going to remain the original Bitcoin, and that's the Bitcoin that can be bought today. But the Bitcoin Classic, there are still servers and nodes running on that blockchain, and that's why it still exists. If all the nodes leave a certain version of Bitcoin or the blockchain or another crypto, essentially that fork dies, but some are still around where a branch came around and some of those nodes stayed on that particular version of the blockchain. And there's also intentional forks. And these can often be announced. You'll hear about a fork being announced ahead of time where an update's going to be pushed, and that's an intentional fork. And that's an example of like Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Gold. And let's see what else I have here for you. So the last thing I have for you is some resources. If you want to learn more and get really in depth about Bitcoin forks, hard forks, soft forks, all those things, you can go to this resource here. I'll link you down below. And it's very in depth, and it's on bitcoin.org, the most trusted site when it comes to information about the blockchain and Bitcoin. And I'll see you in the next lesson.